Hello everybody, it's Jack here at Peach Guitars. Thank you for joining us on another live video. So today is Friday, so today we're normally going to be putting out live videos from now on, so thanks for joining us on another one. I see there's quite a few people watching already. Today's going to be an interesting one, so I wanted to, every week that we've done this I wanted to try something new, but this week we're moving to a totally different price category, and that's something that a few people have been asking for on previous videos. You know, you've been asking to see some less expensive versions of the guitars that we've shown from other brands in the past. And obviously it's not necessarily fitting to put them in, tie them in with the kind of the level of instruments that we've shown you before. So I wanted to just make a video that is entirely about guitars that sit well under the £1,000 price point, and we're actually calling this video sort of like a sub-grand special. None of these instruments, in fact, are any more than £700. So the most expensive thing in the rig today is the amplifier, which, if you've seen any of our videos before, is not always the case. So hopefully this is going to appeal to a lot more people out there that are looking to just pick something up to have a play with. Now is a better time than ever before, really, to if you're looking for maybe a type of instrument that you haven't considered before, and you don't want to spend big bucks. This is hopefully a nice, comfortable price segment for most people, and it's going to enable you to maybe pick up a style of guitar that you hadn't considered before. So I wanted to round it off nicely. I didn't want to just focus on one particular brand like we have done before. As I said, the theme really is kind of guitars for under £1,000. So I've picked 3 different brands that I think most people will be familiar with. It's kind of the big 3 really in this kind of price segment. So I've got some guitars from Fender, which is what I'm going to talk about first. And we talk about Fender guitars all the time, but never do we really focus that much on what most people look for when they're looking for either their first guitar, or if you've never had a Fender style instrument before, you're probably looking at this kind of category. I wanted to pull out guitars specifically from Fender's Player series, which was kind of a revamped version of the Mexican Standard line that they had, I believe 2 years ago now, these came out. And it's such a wide-ranging series as well. There's guitars, all the body styles, all the body shapes that you know from Fender. And the Player series is kind of them addressing the fact that a lot of players would buy these kind of level of instruments and make certain modifications to them. So if you're looking for a guitar that you can gig with quite comfortably, Fender just wanted to kind of give you that out of the box. And not that there was anything wrong before with the Mexican Standard level of instruments, but the Player series adds a few new kind of high function level appointments. So stuff like on this Strat that I was playing at the start, you've now got a 2-post tremolo bridge system, which I just think is a little bit more stable than the 6-screw bridges that they were using before. So as I go through each guitar, I'm not going to spend too long today talking about specs as I have done in previous videos, because I think it's a fairly uniform, it's a fairly blanket spec from each of the brands on these guitars. So if you want to find out more information about that, as is always the case with the live videos, all the links to each guitars are going to be in the live chat on this video. So you can head to the website and find out all the specs that you want to know. But just before I play a little bit more on this guitar, let me tell you some more of the kind of standard Strat specs. And then, after I've played a little bit more on this guitar, I'm going to make an effort to answer some of your questions as well. If you've got any questions, fire them in. And I'll also talk you through the rest of the components that are going on in the rig. So yeah, Player Series Strat. What you get with the Strats is something that you don't very often see as well. Obviously, this is the most kind of commonplace 3 single coil pickup setup that you see in most Strats. But they're also offering HSS, and I believe you can also get HSH, so a guitar with 2 humbucking pickups and a single in the middle, which we hadn't previously seen from Fender for quite a long time in this kind of price segment. But as I said, it's stuff that players were modifying their guitars to have, and people were either using those stacked single coil size humbucking pickups in their Strats, or something like that. So Fender just wanted to address that, make the guitar a little bit more appropriate for a wider array of players, which is always a good thing, and it's kind of reflected in the name. So just a couple of other quick things. Alnico 5 single coil pickups, which, as you'll have heard, particularly on the clean tones, I think these sound particularly stratty, and that's a little bit of a throwaway term, I suppose, because this is of course a Fender Strat, but the reason I say that is it's got all those associations you think of with the Strat sound, and let me demonstrate that with some more clean stuff. Once I've finished playing, I'll talk you through what the entire rig is. So what you'll have hopefully heard there was, as I said before, the real kind of emphasised stratiness, and you don't always hear that because sometimes with guitars that are a little bit more player specific, brands tend to kind of throw the microscope in just a little bit too far, and I think they kind of pull things out of a guitar that you might not necessarily want. For example, the pickups might be subpar, they might be a little bit too powerful, and that can kind of sometimes lose the character of a guitar. This definitely doesn't have that. So I really wanted to kind of make the case for this being a Strat player's Strat, if you see what I mean. It's not anything that it's not supposed to be. It's not kind of modified in any particular direction. It's not too vintage, and it's not too modern. It's going to sit right in the middle. So if you've never played a Strat before, if you've never owned a Strat before, this is probably one of the best entry points now that you could possibly hope to find at a very relative price point as well. So I'm not going to talk too much about the price because the whole issue of these guitars is the fact that they're a little bit more affordable. If you want to find out more of that kind of information, head to the website. So I said I'd address a few questions, so if anyone wants to fire anything in, I'll do my best to give you some answers. I've got a couple of colleagues who are helping me out with the live chat as well as we go. Couple of quick disclaimers. A lot of these guitars have come into us on recent shipments, so they haven't been out in the shop. Therefore, not all of them have undergone the peach process. So what we do with every guitar that we sell is they get set up here in store before they would go out to you. So if you purchased a guitar online, it's going to go through the full setup process. Luke and I have just grabbed a few of these guitars straight out of boxes today. So they're all hanging in there nicely, but I haven't picked them all up, I haven't set them up or anything like that. This is just going to be a plug and play kind of situation so that you can hear these things. But rest assured, if you want to pick any of these up for yourself, they're going to be properly set up. They're going to have every little kind of nook and cranny explored to make sure that they are up to par. So I just want to get that out of the way. And the other thing is I'll tell you about the rest of the rig that's going on. So I wanted to kind of factor everything in together. Obviously, it wouldn't have been appropriate to play these kind of guitars through our normal amp rig, the Dr. Z stuff and the Two Rocks and stuff like that. I wanted to pick an amplifier that's going to be familiar to pretty much everybody, which is the Hot Rod Deluxe from Fender as well. So this is kind of a very well-married pair, these kind of level of this price point in guitars and that price point in amplifiers. It's a sound that everyone will probably be aware of as well. If you've ever played a gig before, you've probably played one of these as a backline amp. So it's a great reference point, and I wanted to extend that to the pedals on the floor as well. So rather than using a lot of the boutique pedals that I normally might use, I'm just sticking to one of my favorite pedal companies that again is kind of very player friendly in terms of their pricing, which is MXR. So what you'll have heard when I was playing there was the clean tone of the amp with a MXR carbon copy delay, and then I've got a little bit of gain coming from a sugar drive from MXR as well, and that's kind of going to be the main pedal I focus on with the more classic guitars. And I do also have the pretty cool MXR Dookie as well for some like higher gain stuff. So I'm going to play, when I get to the PRS guitars, I'm going to play through that. So that's the rig, basically. I do have an HX Effects as well, by the way, from line 6, but I'm not really using that today. It's a glorified tuner for this purpose. So let me just check. I think all the questions hopefully have been addressed from what I've just said and from the stuff that my colleagues are putting in the chat. So as I said, I'm going to kind of skip through these a little bit more hastily than I would do ordinarily. That's because there's just a lot I wanted to get through, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about each guitar. I'm also going to skip through brand by brand, so I'm not going to mix it up like we would normally do and alternate brands, because I think typically if you're you know, I don't want to kind of typecast whoever's watching this too much, but particularly if you're a beginner player, I think you've usually got a brand in mind. Like you're looking at an artist that you like and you want to sound like maybe, or certain guitar players that you want to sound like. So it's usually fairly obvious to you whether you're looking for a Fender style instrument or a Gibson style instrument, which is why I've got Epiphone here to fulfill that role. So I don't think it's worth my talking too much about kind of what each brand represents. I think it's just worth talking about what these guitars represent to each of those brands. So hopefully that makes sense. So sticking with the Fender Player Series, obviously I had to pick out tele. So, you know, the other main contender in the Fender staple lineup is Strats and Teles. So this Player's Edition tele has some of the same appointments that the Strat had. So it's both of them have the 22 jumbo frets, which again is even just having jumbo frets on a guitar at this kind of level isn't always the way. Sometimes you find that you would have to replace the frets because you find them a little bit too small, or the guitar would fret out if you were playing up high. Don't have to worry about that with this. You've also got a 9.5-inch fingerboard radius on all the Player Series guitars, which again is just flattened out a little bit so that you don't kind of choke out the strings when you're bending up high or playing chords down low. It's a nice comfortable neck profile. Something else that's quite significant on these guitars is you've got the bent steel saddles now, which I think project a little bit more. So you just kind of, there's a significant number of tonal upgrades as well as performance upgrades, and that's kind of the main focus with the Player Series. So that's kind of what I want to get across, and I'm just going to show you, as I said, haven't gone through and set these guitars up. These are straight out the box, so let's see what this sounds like. So there we are. I reverted to that at the end there because I saw somebody commented about David Gilmour. And so, yeah, a little bit of run like hell, approximately there. Had to adjust the delay midway through. But you get the idea. This just sounds like a good Telecaster. That's kind of the whole point of these guitars. As I said, it just eliminates the worry. And I think Fender had saturated their lineup before, where you had so many different models. And they had some that were purposely geared towards more modern contemporary styles of playing, others that really just were vintage throwbacks. The Player Series I really like because it just strips away all of that confusion, and it just gives you the essence of a tele, the essence of a strat, with a couple of different options that you can choose from as well in terms of the electronics. So I think that's pretty much what people have been looking for, and that's also the theme for this whole video, is that these guitars are just boiled down to the essence of what people are looking for out of this type of instrument now. So that's why I thought this was a good time to do this, because we've got a nice selection of instruments that represent the true classics, but they're also modern enough to work for the modern guitar player as well. With that said, let me show you the most unique of the Fender Player Series guitars. And I purposefully picked this one because I think if you... There's pretty much two types of Jaguar player. They're your surf guys of the world. Three, to be fair. There's the surf guys, there's the indie guys, and then there's the grunge guys. That's horrific typecasting that I'm doing there. But I think that's what people think of Jaguars and Jazzmaster offset style instruments as being appropriate for. But this guitar kind of challenges that ideal, because this is kind of mixing up two of the different worlds there that I just talked about. In fact, I think it mixes up all three. You've got the classic Jaguar neck pickup, so that's going to be great for the surfy stuff. Nice clean tones, nice clean articulate bright tones. You've also got the bridge humbucker, so that's going to kind of give you some heavier tones, and I'm going to debut the Dookie pedal here to show you what that sounds like. You've also got this little mini toggle switch, which would normally be for Jaguar rhythm circuit, but now this is actually just acting as a coil split for the humbucker, so you can still get those authentic kind of split coil tones as well. And I said it kind of marries up all three worlds because the colour is pure indie. Am I correct, Luke? Does it float your indie boat?
Yeah, to an extent.
That was a yes, with unbridled enthusiasm. So, I'm going to do my best to marry up all three of those elements I was talking about, and you'll hear what the Player Series is so good at. So let's see what it sounds like. So sort of ended up going all over the place there, but that's what's great about a guitar like this, is it's got multiple personalities within it, and just with a couple of pedals you can really get quite a lot of cool things out of it. And it does the best thing about having a Jazzmaster or Jaguar style trem, which is to do the whole behind the bridge harmonic-y things, which it's just good for making a lot of noise. But yes, I think the last comment sums it up quite well. Jeff Beck meets Smiths meets Van Halen. Yeah, why not? I mean, it'll have a good go at all those different things. So hopefully you'll see here from the guitars I chose from the Player series just how varied this lineup still is, even though it's more focused on just delivering a good guitar to all kinds of guitar players. That's the whole point. But there's still something that's going to appeal to everybody. And like I said before at the start of this video, maybe if you're looking for that one guitar to fill up a spot in your arsenal, like if you're looking for an offset guitar, for example, or you're looking for a Telecaster, this is a great way of doing it. Boring guitar. What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? Okay. So, let's switch lanes and talk about Epiphone. This has been a huge year for this brand, because last year was kind of definitely the year of Gibson, and it was the year that they revisited what made them Gibson, and that's that the whole point is that they wanted to get back to their roots. Gibson went under new ownership last year. It might have been 2 years ago now, in fact. And so they wanted to just distill it down to the very basics and the essence of their brand. Same thing as I was talking about with the Player series. I think maybe Gibson had maybe just got away from themselves a little bit, and were making things that were not necessarily what players were looking for, at least not looking to Gibson for. So last year was definitely the year of Gibson really getting back on track with that kind of thing, with the original collection of guitars. This year they wanted to exact that exact same plan. I used exact twice there, but I ran out of vocabulary. They wanted to exact that same plan for Epiphone and kind of make this principle a little bit more price appropriate for people who are maybe starting out on guitar, or as I said with the Fender stuff, if you've never had a Gibson style guitar before. And same thing with Epiphone, they'd always kind of maybe saturated the lineup a little bit too much and made it confusing for people who just wanted, you know, this is a 50s Les Paul standard. So if you just wanted a great 1950s style Les Paul, before this year you would have had a little bit more of a hard time in finding that exact kind of ideology in the guitar. But now you don't. So this is part of the Epiphone original collection now. And this is a 50s Les Paul standard. There's a 60s version as well. The main difference there being the neck profile. So most people will be aware a 50s Les Paul has a slightly thicker neck than a 60s Les Paul. And that's always been the term used to denote mainly that factor. There's a couple of hardware differences and finish differences as well. But that's really where we're at. Now the other big upgrade this year is electronic. So Gibson decided to kind of put a little bit more power under the Epiphone hood, if you like, and they've given this guitar the custom, but I'm just going to check the spec so I'm exact. Pro-bucker humbucking pickups, which sound fantastic, and you've got CTS wiring, which was always quite a premium option. Like that wasn't even always in Gibson guitars, but now you've got it in all the Epiphone models pretty much. So let me, rather than talking too much about what a Les Paul should be, I'm going to show you it via the medium of sound. Okay, so a bit of clean, a bit of dirty, and a couple of mistakes in there. But you get the idea about, what I'm getting at is this does all the stuff that you expect a Les Paul to do with pretty much none of the shortcomings, tonally anyway. I kind of tried to approximate so many of the different sounds there, from the woman tone to that classic like backed off on the volume thing. And you always struggled in the past with Epiphone, unfortunately, kind of due to the subpar electronics in some of their guitars. Again, not all of them, but certain instruments of this kind of vintage vibe would sometimes just fall a little bit short. But you don't have that anymore. You get a really nice response when you turn down the volume. You get a really nice clean tone as well, and that's why I played a little bit more than I would normally do on the clean sound right at the start of that little segment, because there's a lot of high-end content which is really valuable. You might not think it is in an electric guitar, because you might think it's more to do with what the amp is putting out, but to have quite a lot of high-end content, even acoustically, hopefully that's coming through on the microphone, but it's really kind of refreshing to see and hear that you got a little bit more of that classic tone. It's just, purer, if you like. They've just stripped away trimmed all the fat and just made these guitars lean and mean, and that's kind of the entire point of what a Gibson guitar of this nature anyway should be, in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion. Okay, so that's the Les Paul. I'm going to move on to something that's even more stripped back and lean and mean. But before I do talk about this Les Paul Junior, let me just make sure I'm not missing out on any of your questions. So let me have a quick zip through and see what people have been saying. Okay, so somebody asked about the amp. Somebody's answered about the amp as well. Fender Hot Rod Deluxe we're using today with some MXR pedals on the floor, the Sugar Drive and the Dookie, and a carbon copy delay as well. When does the 59 copy come out? I'm not sure exactly which guitar you're referring to, Richard. I know that there's models like the Joe Bonamassa, which is a specific recreation of his, I think it's like his Norm 60 Les Paul. There's a few of those kind of specific recreation guitars or tribute guitars. But really for now, I think Gibson's just focusing on the kind of more broadly termed 50s and 60s Les Paul standards. And then you've got the juniors and you've got the specials and all this kind of stuff as well. Tuning stability, a question about that guitar. Hopefully you'll have heard it hangs in there really nicely. As I said, none of these guitars have been set up because I just got them out of the boxes today to shoot this video. So normally when we sell a guitar, if it sells online, it goes through the entire setup process that any guitar would do. But some of these haven't had that. So it's very telling that a lot of these guitars are staying in tune very well, despite not having had the setup process. So, okay. I think that's about it. So, I'll thank you for dropping me in it there with my mistakes of Eruption and Cliffs of Dover. Yeah, of course. I mean, who can bust out Eruption and Cliffs of Dover without making, was it an hour's worth of mistakes? Yeah,
A lifetime.
a lifetime. I'm gonna live with that, but I'm not gonna try and tap anymore throughout the course of this video. Right, so moving along to Les Paul Junior. This is something that I wanted to see for ages. I know a lot of the other guys here at the shop wanted to see for ages, and I'm sure a lot of you out there wanted to see for a long time. Just such a cool guitar, Gibson Les Paul Junior, and there's an SG Junior as well, I believe, and the specials and stuff like that. And it's so strange that Epiphone had never kind of tackled those guitars, at least not for a very long time. You know, being that these were the budget versions of Gibson guitars back in the day, it's taken them a little bit longer than we would have liked to recreate and get kind of fine-tune the recipe for a less expensive Les Paul Junior style guitar. But according to the spec, which I'll just read out really quickly, there's 5 things I've noted down, and that's all you really need to know about Junior. Mahogany body, mahogany neck, 24 3/4 inch scale, wraparound bridge, and a proper dog ear P90 pickup. So I'm not going to talk too much about this, because I think this is going to be something that's going to be in a lot of people's minds, is this kind of simple, raucous instrument. I'm just going to show you how it sounds. So here's the clean tone, then I'm going to play with a bit of gain, and I've just seen a pickup come in that says I need a neck pickup. I appreciate that, but let me try and convince you otherwise in the course of this clip. I'm going to help it out. Like I said, these guitars haven't been set up. This was one of the few that I played actually before we did this video, and it seemed to be behaving itself. But right now, it appears not to be. But that is nothing that can't be fixed. I thought, I'm not going to carry on with that. Here we go. So lots of sustain there as well. Just wanted to point that out at the end. Quite a lot of different sounds that you can get out of just a single pickup guitar. Something you notice as well is that when you vary, I've talked about this in previous videos when I've played Juniors and Fender Esquires and stuff like that. When you vary the tone control, it's really powerful on this guitar because there's only one pickup and one other pot in the circuit. You can get a lot just out of varying the volume and the tone. And I've got 2 gain pedals on the floor. There's so many different sounds you can get just with these kind of combinations that I think you can make it work. You can make it work. I understand that the requirement to have a neck pickup for certain things, but particularly with a higher gain sound, if you just want that nice kind of vocal-like, really smooth, typical neck humbucker sound or something like that, you can get pretty close just by turning the tone down and putting on another mid-frequency kind of boosted drive pedal, I think. So it's still a versatile instrument. And yeah, for the money, which I've seen a few people commenting about that as I was going, for the price that these guitars are, I don't even need to say all this stuff. It sounds great. It sounds really, really good for what it is. There's a couple of cool different finishes as well, I believe, in the juniors and the specials and stuff like that. So check out the website to find out the full extent. I think at the moment, you guys have pretty much bought into. This was the last junior that we got right now. So there's 2. Forgive me. So if you want one of these, get on it pretty quick because they're not going to be sticking around, but there's more coming in the future. Anyway, I waffled on about that one quite a bit. I'm going to talk about one more Epiphone. And what I wanted to do with this kind of particular setup is not really talk too much about, Epiphone, it's same with Fender. There's so many different models I could have included in this little segment. So with Epiphone, I kind of veered away from talking about the casinos and the 335 dots and guitars like that are real staples in the Epiphone range, have been for years and years. And those are equally iconic guitars. But what I wanted to do was show you some of the alternatives that you can get of more expensive styles of guitars that you would normally go for, like a Gibson or a custom shop instrument, just to show you how great these Epiphone and these kind of sub £1,000 versions of these guitars are. I think the case will be made very, very strongly for that when I come onto the PRS guitars, which I'm going to talk about next. But before I do, let me just show you this SG. Now, I haven't put my hands on this guitar today at all. So as I said earlier on, I haven't tuned these up, I haven't set these up, these are straight out the box. If you do buy a guitar from us though, it gets fully set up before it leaves, so rest assured in that fact. So yeah, the SG, same thing with the Les Paul, they've just stripped it right down to the basics. So you've got this, which is the 61 spec SG standard. There's also another SG standard that has the batwing pickguard that most people will be familiar with. And there's also an SG custom and an SG special, which has 2 P90 pickups. I think there might be an SG Junior as well. There's quite a few guitars, but there's nothing kind of.
You get vibrola and stuff as well, I think.
You can, yes, I believe Lucas just told me you can get sort of with vibrola tremolo systems and stuff like that. But there's just nothing that doesn't make sense. There's something that's going to appeal to a certain facet of every player's kind of the spot in their arsenal they want to fill. It's not like there's all these novelty guitars. So let me show you some of the tones you can get out of an SG. I love the sound of a good SG because it's got a different mid-range to a Les Paul, which hopefully I'm going to demonstrate right now. Okay, had to play Angus Young, obviously. I mean, he's one of my favourite guitar players anyway, but when you've got a Red SG, you kind of have to go there. And this guitar does it very well, thanks in no small part to the upgrades to the electronics that I talked about earlier on with the Les Paul. This guitar also has the ProBucker humbucking pickups and the CTS wiring now, so a couple of significant upgrades there over guitars of yesteryear. I just think they sound fantastic, and you've got a lot more control with the volume and tone controls on these guitars now, so it's a little bit more versatile. They sound, I think they've got a nicer clean tone as well, but of course, you know, you want to just dig into it and play some AC/DC, at least I do when I see a Red SG. Okay, so let's move on to the final brand, and this is something that, if people don't know, I'll just do a quick sort of overview of PRS guitars in case anyone doesn't know. If you've got Fender and Gibson as the two pillars of solid body electric guitar making, then PRS is probably the best fit to sit in the middle, because what they do is they combine elements of both. So what I've got here from PRS are 3 custom 24 models. These are all part of the SE lineup. And the reason that I'm showing you these guitars today is that they are on a stupendous deal. There's tons of different finishes of these guitars. So this one is the spalted maple. Let me just get up the spec sheet so I'm absolutely confident in what I'm saying, because I've seen so many of these different custom 24 variants that we've got. The bottom line is this is the spalted maple vintage sunburst finish. So if I just talk you through the specs really quickly in case you don't know about PRS guitars, it'll be hopefully somewhat obvious as to kind of some of the elements that get combined here. So you've got mahogany wood body and a maple top, which is indicative of a Gibson style guitar. It's a set neck as well, so that's kind of where you get, you know, a little bit more of the hefty sustain and thicker mid-range that you get out of a Gibson style instrument. Rosewood neck, rosewood fingerboard, but you then get certain Fender style elements in there. So obviously you've got a vintage style tremolo system, which works great on these guitars, by the way. You've also got the option to split the humbucking pickups via a push-pull on the tone control, and a standard Gibson style 3-way switch. You've got 24 frets as well, hence the name Custom 24. So it's kind of, it sits right in the middle. Oh, and the other thing is the scale length is in the middle as well. So on the tension on the neck feels pretty much bang in between a Gibson at 24 3/4 inch scale and a Fender at 25.5. This is 25 inch scale length. So it actually veers a little bit closer to a Gibson style scale length. Okay, this guitar came out of the box and it needs some tuning. So while I'm doing that, I think, yeah, just my general thoughts on PRS guitars. They are some of the most well-crafted, high-grade instruments going, and that's kind of referring mainly to the guitars that we see most from them and the stuff that we focus on usually, which is the core line instruments, which is the USA lineup. But this SE lineup has, I think these are some of the most popular guitars that have ever been sold in the world. We sell so many of these guitars. Hence the reason that John has decided to buy an ungodly number of them. So whether it's this vintage sunburst spalted maple guitar or any of the other finishes I'm going to show you, I'm not going to spend too long playing these guitars because they will all sound largely similar. So if I kind of show you most of the tones on this guitar, and then I'm going to just quickly talk through some of the other finishes that we've got as well. Okay, so I'm going to go in pretty blind here. I haven't set these guitars up or anything like that. This came straight out of the box. I'm just going to give the strings a quick stretch. While I'm doing that as well, before I play, I'm hoping I'm not missing too many of your questions, because they're coming in pretty quick. There's a lot of kind of good support for the Epiphone guitars I just showed you. And you know, I see a lot of you guys are requesting different themes for these videos as well. We do take all this stuff on board, so the best thing to do is, you know, comment on the video after we're done, and we'll certainly take in any ideas that you've got of other stuff you'd like to see in the future into consideration. But hopefully, you know, this is something that was overdue to do sort of lower priced instruments. And speaking of, I didn't actually tell you what the amazing deal was. The price of these is $599. Down from $799. So that's a £200 saving. Just a quick sum there for you. $599 for this level of instrument is stupendous. It's ridiculous. It's miraculous. All of the buzzwords. But let me, once I've got this in tune, I'm going to show you how it sounds, and that should be proof enough as to why PRS SE is definitely one of the best contenders in this price bracket. I hope that was going to be worth it. So what you get with PRS guitars is not only something that plays extremely well, You also get something that sits, as I said, pretty much bang in the middle tonally between the thickness that you expect with some more overdriven sounds with a Gibson style guitar, and then to have all that clarity that you would get out of a Fender style guitar as well by using the coil splits and stuff like that, and the tremolo. It's kind of a do-it-all guitar, and that's not for everybody, but I do think that, and obviously there's not also to say, it's not to say that they're kind of copies of anything, because PRS very much have their own voice and their own identity, as is evidenced by the looks of these incredible guitars. But I just think that they pretty much kind of complete the puzzle if you're looking for something that, you know, doesn't take up too much of your allowance for guitar spend, but also will cover a lot of tonal ground. This will do it very, very well, and it looks amazing. And for the value for money that these guitars are currently on, which I'll come back to in a minute when I showed you the other two, it is kind of preposterous and ridiculous and all those other things I said earlier on. So this one, this is probably my favourite of the guitars that we've got on this deal. This one, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here with the pronunciation of this. We've done several guitars that feature ziricote woods, and I still haven't learned the correct pronunciation, so I deeply apologise if that's not correct. But this guitar is the Ziricote Wood Edition, or Ziricote as Americans I believe say. It's the same exact deal as that other guitar I just talked about. Mahogany body, maple top. This has got the Ziricote veneer as opposed to the spalted maple veneer that was on that guitar. All the other specs are the same neck profile, which is to say it's a wide, thin neck profile. The other thing I didn't mention is that these are the 8515 pickups, which are actually the same pickups that are used in the S2s and the core line guitars. I believe it's the same, or certainly a version of the 8515s that you would find in a core line custom 24 guitar. So I'm just going to tune this one up, show you a little bit of some more tones. What I should have done is really thought about this intelligently and staggered them and showed you some clean tones on one, some crunch tones on another, and some high gain. But when you're playing one of these guitars, you kind of just feel the compulsion to be dynamic and to shift gears all the time, because the guitar will allow you to do that. And that's something I think is brilliant about PRS guitars. You don't have to kind of have it set up for one particular style. You know, you do find that you might buy a shred guitar, or you might buy a guitar that you dedicate to use as a clean kind of sound, or alternate tunings, or whatever it might be. With a PRS, you kind of don't have to do that. It's just whatever you want to play on it with any level of gain or any kind of tone. It's going to respond very well to that. So let me show you some more. Okay, did get a little bit out of tune there at the end, I will admit, but as I said before, and I've said several times throughout this video, none of these have been set up, which is what we do with all the guitars that we sell. So if you buy something online, it's going to get the full setup treatment. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I've just literally yanked these guitars out of their boxes, so hence why it might have gone a little bit out of tune there. But you get the idea. Once again, clean. I wanted to show you some more kind of breakup tones, so I used the MXR Sugar Drive pedal for that one, as well as using the Dookie for the higher gain thing at the end. So that kind of gives you an idea of what custom 24s are largely about, but I had to talk about this as well. I mean, come on. So this one is part of the sandblasted lineup, and there's a few different finishes. This is the emerald finish. And it's obviously got a little bit more of a kind of specific vibe about this one. I think you wouldn't turn up and do a funk gig with this kind of instrument. That said, you know, it's tonally exactly the same as all the, spec-wise it's the same as all the other Custom 24s I've shown you. But what's cool with all these different editions of the Custom 24 that we've got is you can just pick the guitar that you like the look of and the feel of, because there is a slight difference in the feel. This guitar's got more of a satin, well, body and neck. The other two had gloss neck finishes and body finishes, so that might be a consideration as well. But overall the tones should be largely the same from guitar to guitar. What's really cool though, and I shot myself in the foot here, I apologise to anyone who was checking out the Yamaha A4K video and I said that you can pick your top. We don't currently have photos of all the tops for those guitars, but we do, or they're certainly in the works. Our photographer Adam has had his work cut out photographing all of the SE Custom 24s that have come in, every single one. So if you go to the website, you can pick the top of any of the Custom 24s. I know that for a fact. So if you're interested in checking these out and you want to be specific about which one you get, you can do it by serial number and pick the top that you want. With that said, let me show you what this guitar sounds like for one last time. yes, it can do Prince funky cleans as well. Just had to round it off there. Hopefully you'll get an idea that the Custom 24 is just one of the most versatile guitars of all time, and now you can get one at $599 in the SE line, which is pretty ridiculous. So I just wanted to kind of hopefully round that out quite nicely with just all the different things that a PRS can do, showing you some of the things that an Epiphone can do now that Epiphones are being done right once again, if I may be so bold. And you know, I started this video talking about good old Fender and the Player series, and just how kind of complete that series is once again, which is just great to see. So basically, if you're looking for any kind of instrument, any kind of solid body electric, you got it covered just with these three brands alone. And of course there's a multitude of other brands that I haven't touched on today, but if you want to find out any more about anything that we sell, you can do that by going to the website. Now I just want to kind of round up with a couple more things before I sign off this video. Check out the Peach Guitars newsletter if you haven't done so already. That's something that you can sign up to by clicking the link that will be in the live chat. And it's basically something that we put out 2-3 times a week. I'm not going to hold our marketing guys to this because I know that it's a touchy subject. But it goes out a few times a week, and it just collates all of the stuff that we have been doing throughout the course of the week, including all the stuff that we do in these live videos. So any of the guitars that you've seen right here, or indeed in any of the other videos that we've done in the course of the week, they're all in the newsletter, so it just keeps you completely up to date with everything that's going on. So make sure that you do that, and as always, please make sure you're subscribed to the Peach Guitars YouTube channel, and that if you've enjoyed this video today, do us a big favor and share it if you would, because that really helps us to just to get the interest, so that every live video we do. Today's been great. I appreciate all the support and the questions and stuff that you guys have had, and we want more of that. So just keep it coming, keep it shared, and we'll keep these exciting for you. So hopefully I've kind of made my point for guitars that are under £1,000, well under £1,000 in fact, and just some of the great things you can do. You know, we're always talking about boutique gear, and I love it, and we all love it. But really, if you're looking to, when we can of course, go out and gig again frequently, this is kind of all you need, you know. And the fact that these instruments are rock solid and stable now, once they've had a good setup, you can get a great valve amp like that for, you know, kind of decent money, and you get some great pedals on the floor. This is a rig that I'm sure anyone would be happy to go out and play any kind of gig with. So hopefully I've made the case for that. Someone asked for the top 3 today. I don't know if I want to kind of confine my choices, but I mean,
Fender, Epiphone and PRS, isn't it?
well, I suppose the specific models. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Fender, Epiphone and PRS. I'm going to keep it at that. You almost got me there. I almost started talking about my favourites. Whatever my favourite might be, whatever your favourite might be, just make sure that you get to the website quickly, because even though we've got a large number of these PRS guitars, as is proved by the fact of the number of Epiphone guitars we now have, as so many of you guys have bought them, just get on there quickly, because if there's something you want, we will be getting stock in the future, but I think these PRS guitars are kind of a limited thing, so you know what to do. I'm not going to push the sales thing too much. So there we are, another live video done. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate the support. I'm going to be seeing you this time next week as well. Who knows what the theme might be, but do comment with your suggestions of stuff that you want to see, and we'll do our best to include as much of it as we can. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great weekend. I hope that you're all staying safe and just about hanging in there still. We'll be through this all very soon. So thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next week.